The film that you're about to see is going to show you how this year's Christmas project was produced. Notice that it is a pine bread box, and it has rounded sides, a rounded top, and of course the bottom and back. And the main thing is it has a roll top door that works just like this. The students really had a lot of fun working on this project because they were enthused about the way that it actually looks.
One of the very first operations was, of course, to organize the class. And this was done by having actually company meetings. The students were the workers in the company, and I served as the boss and also the instructor. They were given the information that they needed on how to construct the bread box project, and then they were allowed to actually sign up for the different jobs that they thought that they would be able to handle. So the students would volunteer, like in this case, the students were volunteering to run the band. And I would actually teach them this job, and I would try to choose the students who were best suited for each one of the jobs. This is the 800 board feet of pine. We only paid 33 cents a board foot for it, but notice that it cost us $280. The layout work was done by different students in the different periods. Here I'm just trying to get them started by laying out some of the bottom for the project and working around the knot, which was a very important part. Notice the class in the background is working on the project. So this was a continuous operation, the layout was.
The first grade class was assigned to making the bottom. The bottom was simply a piece of pine. It's about 11 inches wide by 18 inches long with a dado cut at the side here and a chamfer along each of the ends.
One of the first operations was, of course, to radial arm saw to the lines which were put on by the person who did the layout. In order to keep the sawdust down in the lab, we actually took the pieces of wood outside to belt sand them. They were belt sanding both of the surfaces. This is a ripping operation. Notice that the special gauge was used each time so that each of the boards was exactly the same width finish. They were always careful to make sure that they got the proper edges against the fence. The students always inspected their work because they knew that the quality of the project would depend upon their own individual efforts. Notice that they worked as teams. Then the ripped edge was cleaned up on the joiner and made to be perfectly flat and nice and smooth. The next operation then was to cut, again with the radial arm saw, the boards to exact length. And in this case, it happened to be 18 inches. So this student, of course, had a very important job of just trimming the boards up, making sure that they were cut square and the exact length. Because the dado was cut in each of the ends, this is where the sides fit in. This is a 3/4 inch dado, and the student is making a cut right here. This is with our table saw. Notice that we do have two table saws. Students work together always so that they would kind of motivate each other and keep each other doing things the right way. This is a shaping operation. We did put a beveled edge on each one of the boards, each one of the ends of the boards. Notice that we used a backup board here just to keep it from splitting off at the end.
The second period class had the job of making the door slat and the back for the bread box. Notice that the back was a piece that fits right in the back of the project and create some of the strength in the construction. The back piece fits into the side dado like that, and then each of is the glass which makes up the door. Remember that we made 102 bread boxes, so that means that we made an awful lot of these sticks, and the door would ride, these slats would ride right in the groove to form the door.
The first operation again was to rough cut the boards to the proper length. Now remember, this was a different group of students. This was a different period. And so they were just kind of like the subcontractors. Here they would rip these backboards to the proper width, working as a team. They weren't especially in a hurry to do the job. They just kept moving on them and would inspect their work very closely so that they could do a good job. Notice that we do have quite a few girls. I had about 25% of the students were girls, and I found that they did a real outstanding job. Again, all of the pieces of wood were belt sanded so that they would be just ready to put together. Now, the pieces had to be planed down to a half-inch thick. Here we're actually making the strips for the door front. Notice that these are thin strips of wood, and it's just a matter of passing them through the bandsaw and making the final inspection, stacking them up. We had to make an awful lot of these strips, and so this bandsaw was being used, and it did leave a rough surface on the stick, so we then went over to a special setup that we put on the lathe, and we would just sand these surfaces very quickly to take off the saw marks. We had a lot of students work a lot of hours on this, and we tried to keep these machines running almost all the time. The next operation was just simply to package the sticks so that they were ready for the kit.
The third grade class had the responsibility of making this side piece, and they had to make 204 of these for the 102 bread boxes. Notice, first of all, there's a groove cut in this area, and a rabbet, and then one of the hardest things was cutting the groove for the door. Remember that the door slats had to ride in the groove just like this. To cut this rounded groove, we used a special jig, just like this, and we clamp this to the table. You'll see it in the film in just a second, and the router just followed this shape to cut this arc.
Again, the first operation was to radial arm saw the boards to the rough length, prepare them for the belt sanding. Again, this is a different period, a different group of students. The boards were then ripped to width, exact right width for these side pieces. And then cut to the exact length. And this was really an important job because all of the patterns hinged on them cutting them exactly square and exactly the same length. Then a dado was cut in the back. This is so that the door would slide down the back of the project in kind of a hidden operation. And here the inspection's being made. We always inspected everything. The pattern was laid out. It's simply laid out on each one of the boards, and then it was bandsawed down to the line. Of course, this had to be done accurately so that the sanding and the last step of evening it up would take place and make a real nice finished edge for the project. Each one of the students really got good at their operation. Now here they're cutting the groove for the door. notice that we had two routers working on that, and then we also had a router mounted in the shaper table to round off the outside edge.
The fourth grade class had the responsibility of making the top piece. And actually the top is two different pieces of wood. This piece is just barely seen, but it serves a very important function in that it allows the box to be constructed. So you can see that this piece fits on here just like that, and this has a decorative shaped edge.
The boards were again belt sanded in preparation, jointed, and then of course they were ripped to the proper width. Remember that this group had to make two different sizes of boards, so they had to keep track of which pieces they were working on. They were cut then to the finished length. In most cases, we tried to work to lines. We didn't put stop blocks on the machines because the different periods as they would come in would need to make different setups, and so they just put lines on the table. They were laying out the pattern for the top, and now the corners are being cut off so that they could be rounded. This is just the two, really the front two corners of the project. Now they're sanded down to the line. Evened up. Everyone in the background is also working on the project, doing their own job. Then it was finally finished, and each student surrendered their share of stock, and they got a kit. That is, all of the parts that they needed to make the project. You can see here that we have the big pile of projects all out and together, and this was really a big day for the students. They really looked forward to the time when they would get their own and where they would be able to start finishing their kit. Now, we only mass-produced them up to this point. In other words, from this point forward, they would take and do their own work. There are the sides and the tops and the bottoms of the project, and we just gave them to the students in a random manner so that there really wasn't any choice in it. We always kept the sample project before them.
Since we made so many special cuts on the box, it was really kind of fun just to put the box together as soon as the student got it. And so they would put the pieces together, the sides in the grooves, put the top on, and you could even start your door just like this.
Each time they would put their project in a paper bag so that they could keep their parts together, and all of them had to be hand sanded. All of the parts had to be hand sanded and prepared for the finish. And we finished them before we put them together. In other words, we put on a coat of stain. It's actually a wood finish, Minwax brand wood finish, which had a walnut stain. We used a color called Special Walnut. There's the can, the yellow can of Minwax wood finish. Each piece was soaked with the wood finish, and then, after it was dry, we used the screwdrivers and really there was only 6 wood screws to hold the project together, one in each side of for the top, and 4 in the bottom to hold the sides on. Because really the dados did most of the work of holding it together. Then the students would go ahead and put the back on their project and the knobs on the front, and just about be ready for taking the project home. There's always a little bit of extra touch-up work, and each project was actually graded. Now, another important aspect was the sales. We do sell some of our projects on an order basis to the different teachers within the school. And we sold the bread boxes for $19 each, and we really didn't spend a lot of time trying to secure orders. They came in very quickly.
In working on the design for the silk screen, which was basically done on just 6 of the slats, we worked with some rub-on letters like this, made of just the right proportions, and we found actually this was found off of a bread packaging wrapper, that is the wheat part here that we used, and these were blown up and made to the full size that we needed for this project. And then the silk screen was cut, that is the lacquer film was cut using this as a pattern. And now you'll see how we actually put the ink on the wooden strips.
We only had to do 6 of the slats. So the best, really, that we had the students choose the best 6 slats, and then they would line them up and just put a piece of masking tape on the back to hold them together while it was in the silk screen frame. And this is the setup that we used. We had a lacquer-based silk screen that was actually hand-cut. Notice that the slats are being put in, the screen is dropped, and then the ink is run over the top. A friend of mine, Sam Hoff, a graphic arts teacher, helped with the setup and really appreciated his dedication to the project. And here was the finished bread. The students here now were just getting ready to take their projects home. Of course, this was really an exciting time within the shop. A lot of value was going home here. Those boxes retailed for about $29 to $35 each, and the students really felt like they had a nice gift to give to their parents. Just kind of in review, we made 202 projects, and we spent about 8 days doing it. It was a rush time. We sold 73 shares of stock for $6 each. In other words, that's what the students paid for their kit, was $6. We brought in $438 through the sale of stock. All of this was handled through the school bank. Then we sold 9 projects at $19 each. That was our retail sales. And like I say, we really didn't want to sell too many, so that made a total income of $109. The reason we didn't want to sell too many was because it was a lot of work to put those projects together. We spent $430, and we bought a new router table for $40 with the company money. But we still had a profit after all of that. Again, we spent $470. We had an income of $609. So we had a profit of $138. And with that $138, we talked to the class about what they wanted to do with it, and decided that with the profit that we would buy a new portable electric hand plane for the shop. We do make log clocks and do some work that will become very handy in the future. It'll be something that was given by the